Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me for the 8th session of the Different Strokes virtual conference, How to Start a Different Strokes Group in Your Area. I'm Caroline Saunders, and I'm the Group Network Coordinator for Different Strokes. Joining me to support the session this afternoon is Lisa Beaumont, who's one of our volunteer group coordinators. Lisa set up and runs one of our support groups based in West Kent. Before we get started, there's a few housekeeping points I'd like to mention. Firstly, none of you are going to be visible on screen. You've all been put on mute. The only people you'll see today are myself and Lisa. I do have someone with technical support in the background, and that's Austin Willett, who may appear on the screen if there's any questions he needs to share with us. The session is also being recorded and will be available to revisit in the future on our YouTube channel, along with all the other webinar sessions we have posted this week. The only exception to that is the Stroke Survivor virtual meetup, which was a private and closed session yesterday afternoon and was not recorded. If you want to say hello and tell us where you're from this afternoon, you can do so in the chat function below. I know a few of you have been using that already. Hello to Simon from Edinburgh. I think you were the first one to say hello this afternoon. I'd also like to draw your attention to the question and answer tab. If you have any questions you'd like to ask during this afternoon, please put them in there and you'll either have a typed reply or we will look to answer them at the end for you. If we don't get time to get to all the questions today, I'll do the best to get back to you by email to share the answers for you. I'd like to say a big thank you to Bolt, Burden and Kemp, who have kindly sponsored our event this week. And with all the housekeeping out of the way, let's get started. As I said, I'm Caroline Saunders. I'm the Group Network Coordinator, and I'm based at our head office in Milton Keynes. My role with the charity is to work with our existing groups, of which we currently have 36 around the country, and also to develop new groups. It's fair to say all our groups are very different in what they have to offer, although they are all the place for stroke survivors to go and meet other people where they can share their experiences. Some groups meet regularly for a chat over a cup of coffee at a local cafe. Some groups hire a venue, which could be a local hall, a community room, or a meeting room at a local church. Groups can also offer exercise sessions with a qualified instructor or even guest speakers. The frequency of meetings for our groups, excuse me, varies with some monthly, some weekly, and some who offer even more than one session a week. As groups are starting to reopen following their closure due to COVID, we now also have a group that offers regular face-to-face meetings, as well as continuing their online meetings with their group members. All the groups are run by volunteers who are mainly stroke survivors themselves, or the partner or family member of a stroke survivor. There are governance requirements that each group must follow, but the direction of the group is very much dependent on what the volunteer has to offer and also what the members of the group want to get out of each session. When someone approaches me about starting a group, we initially have a conversation over the phone. This allows me to find out more about them, where they are in their recovery, what their vision would be for a new Different Strokes group. I'll talk to them also about what our existing groups offer and reassure them that I'm here to support them along the way. The main points that I'd initially discuss are things like, how often would you like to meet? This is something for you to decide with what you'd feel comfortable committing to, whether you hold meetings every week or once a month. In the early stages of setting up a new group, you could find you need to change the day or the time that you make the meeting to make it more accessible to get as many members as possible to attend. Where you would like to meet can play a major part in the success of a group. It needs not only to be affordable, but does it have a car park? Are there good links with public transport? And importantly, is it easy to find? If someone's feeling anxious about coming along and joining the group for the first time and they can't find the venue, they may very well turn around and go back home again. Are your family supportive of you starting a group? It really helps to have as much support as possible, whether this is encouraging you with setting up a group or coming along and helping out with each session and getting involved. Having other people that help with the running the group can make such a difference. It is a big commitment and it's a lot to do for one person. I would encourage you to reach out as members join for volunteers to get involved in helping with either setting out the chairs, making drinks, organising fundraising, looking after finances or the group's bank account. It could just be sending out reminders to everyone when the next meeting is going to be held. It's also important to consider what type of group you would like. Over the course of time, it's likely the group will evolve as it grows, but do consider what you want it to be. Is it going to be a social group? Is it going to be an exercise group? Do you want to have activities, guest speakers? Would you like to bring in an instructor? If you want to bring an exercise, you need to make sure that they're appropriately qualified and that they're insured, and that's something that I would help you out with. Have you thought about how you'll reach out to stroke survivors in your area? You may have contacts that have been involved in your recovery that can refer members to you. Think about how you feel about using social media to find stroke survivors near you and raising publicity for the group. An important point to consider is how the group will run financially to cover the cost of venue hire, instructors, refreshments, to name just a few of the possible outgoings. Some groups charge subs for each meeting, and some try to reduce the cost of members by holding regular fundraising events. We have a group network agreement which details the terms and conditions for running the group and also the obligations of us here at head office. We also issue with the group handbook. The handbook is a great resource, not only as you start a group, but even for long-established groups. It has copies of forms you may need, from consent forms to photographs, recording members' personal information, and health and safety risk assessments. If something comes up that you're not sure about and you can't get hold of me or anyone else at head office, the group handbook is a great starting point to try and find the answer to your question. If there's a group nearby that's easy travelling distance for a potential new volunteer, I would recommend that they go along and visit the group. It's a great experience to see the group in action, talk to the current volunteer coordinator and find out how they feel about running the group, and to just see how members feel when they're along at the group each week. There's a lot to think about, and a lot of knowledge locally will come from a stroke survivor looking to start the group. However, I'm always at the end of the phone to guide you through the process, discuss any concerns you have and support you as much as possible. It can be quite overwhelming when we start to discuss the details of setting up and running a group. It really isn't something that happens overnight, and there's an application process for all volunteers to go through, as well as finding the right venue and finding yourself new members. I'll issue with a startup pack, checklist, and together we'll work through what needs to be done to get the group started. Now, I think I've briefly touched on what we need to do to start a group. I say briefly, but I might have managed to completely overwhelm you there with all that information, or hopefully I've inspired you to think about starting a group in your local area. Either way, I think now's a good time to introduce you to one of our volunteers who's set up a group. We can't physically visit a group today, but the next best thing is to hear from someone who's not only set up a group, but has kept the group going during the pandemic. Lisa Beaumont is a stroke survivor herself, and she set up our West Kent Different Strokes Support Group back in, I think, 2018. So Lisa, you've been very patiently sitting there waiting for me to introduce you properly. Are you ready to come on screen and say hello? Yeah, lovely. Now we're going to talk about setting up a different strokes group, but really good to find out a bit about you to start with, Lisa. So can you tell me about when you had your stroke and what you remember about it?
Yes, so I had a brain hemorrhage, a cerebral stroke in 2011, and I remember some of it quite clearly. I remember the intensity of the headache as it was actually happening, and being sick immediately as it happened, and being taken off to hospital by the paramedics, going down the stairs on a stretcher in my house and being watched by my two young daughters, who were both still at primary school at the time, and they watched me in their dressing gowns as I was carried down the stairs. And I have a really vivid memory of their two faces looking through the banisters at me. So yeah.
Oh, quite a strong memory of that. That's quite heart-wrenching for you, isn't it? So what happened when you got to the hospital?
Well, quite soon after I arrived, luckily that first hospital was only about a mile from where we lived. So my husband and the girls came to see me later on that day. I did see them on that day, but not long after that, I went into a coma, and then there's a 6-week gap, which I've no idea what happened. So.
Oh, goodness. So how did you find different strokes then, Lisa?
Wow. There's a story. Yeah. Okay. I found it eventually thanks to my psychotherapist, who I was seeing long after I'd been discharged and come home. So it must have been probably a couple of years after the actual hemorrhage. I was talking to my psychotherapist, and he recommended different strokes to me. And I'm so glad that he did. And I just wish that I'd known about it a lot sooner. So that's one of the things that I work on now, is trying to get the message into the hospitals so that patients, when they're already recovering as inpatients, can hear about it in Kent.
Definitely, it's definitely a good thing. And I think that's one of the things that local groups can do, is raise awareness in their local area, and particularly their local hospitals, about different strokes and what we offer to stroke survivors.
Mhm.
So what do you think Different Strokes did for you then, Lisa, once you got in touch with us?
Ooh. I think it was just wonderful to start being able to exchange experiences with people who would understand. It's finding people who can really understand the situation that you're in. And it felt like a really safe space to be able to share feelings and ask questions and get really interesting views from a range of different people via the Facebook group originally. But just maybe it does help you feel that you're not on your own, that actually there's a lot of other people who've experienced similar things to you. So that's good. And then obviously some people who have made good recoveries, that helps you to have some hope.
Definitely. And I think being in the Facebook group, you can just reach out and ask any question.
Mhm.
And there's always someone there to give you an answer and to give you some support and information about their experience.
Mhm.
So what then made you decide to set up a local group then once you'd found an online support group?
Mhm. Well, it was because I started making friends, so to speak, in the Facebook group, but it got to the point where I wanted to actually talk to people in real life in the same room as me, rather than just sending messages in Facebook. And by chance, I went to a local parish council meeting near my house, and at that, I met a guy who also happens to have had, he's not in Different Strokes, but he's also had a brain hemorrhage. And so I spoke to him, and that was the first time I'd actually met another person like me. And as David said, that's because there's not many of us around that make it. So that was fantastic. But once I'd met him, I thought, gosh, I'd really like to get a few more people together, because I shared some information with David that he didn't know. And I just thought, gosh, this is crazy. I've found out so much information that I could be telling other people. So
Definitely,
that's
it's
why,
great to share things.
yeah, so that's why I decided to set up the group.
And what stage of your recovery were you at when you decided, that's it, I'm going to set up a group?
Well, it must have been about 5 or 6 years afterwards. So I will have been back home for a few years, but I would still be, well, I still am, left side paralysed and partially sighted with hemianopia from the stroke. So both those disabilities were still there, but I was a lot stronger and doing a lot and in a much better place mentally, having been at home for a few years.
It definitely helps to be in the right place. I think if you try to set up a group as soon as you come out of hospital, it's going to be way too soon. You need to have some recovery yourself first, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
So what were your initial steps then once you decided to set a group up?
Right.
Did you think about your venue, your members?
The first steps were that I'd stayed in touch with several of the nurses who had looked after me whilst I was recovering in different hospitals. So I just told the nurses that this is what I was thinking of doing. A couple of them worked on the stroke ward in our local hospital, and they thought it was a fantastic idea. So they said that they'd help to direct people that they knew or former patients of theirs towards me, and that would be a good way of me finding people to whom it was relevant. And then through Central Different Strokes, I got leaflets from you, Caroline, and I took all the leaflets up to the hospital and started distributing them.
Definitely, because I think initially you've got to think about, you want to set up a group, but you also need people to come along, and you do need to find those people. And if you have got contacts that you can make use of to refer members, that's a great start, as well as the leaflets and the posters around doctors' surgeries, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So how did you go about finding a suitable venue? Because that can be quite difficult, can't it?
Yes, it can be difficult. Initially, to start with, at the very beginning, we used a room that was given to us by our local Headway. So an organisation that's involved with brain injury is might be happy to give you favourable terms. That's what happened. So I just went to Headway and I explained to them, because I'd had contact with them to get guidance about living with brain injury. So I explained to them what my plan was, and they offered me a room in their premises to start with.
Okay, and then you moved to another premise at some point.
Yes.
You've moved around a few times, haven't you?
Yeah. So we used the room in Headway for a couple of years, maybe, and then it got to the point where they were beginning to increase the fees that they were charging. And I had always wanted our group to be completely free and available to anyone to come, open access. So we didn't at that point have any funds particularly in the bank. So I decided that Headway was going to have to not be our venue anymore because we couldn't afford it. And one of the group members who'd found me by then was very handily a scoutmaster in a local scout group, and she was able to organise and offer us the use of their scout hut for free, which is perfect because it was in a great local location and it wasn't going to charge us anything at all. So that was ideal. So it was really thanks to a group member that I found the venue, the second one.
And can you remember, how did you feel when you had the first meeting with the new group?
Well, it was the very first meeting. In fact, Austin came to as our first meeting, setup meeting in Tunbridge Wells. And it was fantastic. There were so many people who came, and then just to meet people in real life. And the nurses came as well. And there were lots of kind of renewed acquaintances happening. And it was just really a lovely feeling of togetherness and kind of companionship. And everybody feeling very relaxed about each other because we knew that we were kind of in the same boat. So it was very easy to talk and get to know each other, even though at least one of the people who came to that initial meeting was suffering from aphasia at the time. In fact, she was Bulgarian. So not only was she unable to speak, but English wasn't her first language. But she still managed to communicate enough with us, and we just all got on really well.
So when you had your first meeting, did you talk to the members then about where would they like to see the group go, or was it just really getting to know each other at that point?
Initially, it was getting to know each other, and I had a vision myself. I'd kind of had the vision of how I thought it might work. So I described to them what my vision was and invited them to let me know what they thought about it. So yeah, it was. I think it does help if the person setting up the group takes charge to some extent of shaping how it's going to take shape over time.
Definitely, because I think you're giving up your time volunteering to run the group, and you don't want to overcommit yourself. And you want to make sure that it's something that you can manage, whether it's weekly, monthly, and what people want out of the group. Because I think you have a lot of guest speakers at your group meetings, don't you, Lisa?
We had for one of the years we were at Headway, we used to have a guest speaker each month, and we're going to start that again when we begin again this month. So yes, I like finding people who have got something interesting that my group can learn about, a relevant topic, and inviting them along, and they're always really happy to come and give their time and spread their own message. So, and it's a really useful way. So we've had really good talks about supported employment and what you have to do for returning to work and things like that, which are relevant for working age survivors. That's why I'm very aware of differentiating what I do from anything the Stroke Association does locally, because they obviously do run groups too. So I emphasize mine as being about working age and topics that might be relevant to workers.
And have you found that as time's gone on, other members have got involved in helping you to run the group and support you with what you need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I've fairly early on, I did request some support from the group. I said that one of the areas that I was going to struggle with was anything to do with the finances, partly because I've lost a bit of ability with sequencing numbers since I had the hemorrhage. So I knew that I was not going to be a good person to be in charge of the finances. So I just asked the group one session who anybody interested in helping out as a volunteer treasurer for the group. And one of the ladies absolutely jumped at it because she is a finance manager in her job. She cares for her husband, her husband's had the stroke, and he also has a background in finance. And between them, they were very happy to take on the role of banking and keeping an eye on the finances, which was a huge relief to me, because I would not be happy if I had to take that responsibility, because I know I'm not the right person for that. I'm the right person for the publicity and promotions. That's my specialism in my work anyway, so I can do that. And Mel very kindly does the finance. So it's a really good team that we formed.
And I think it's definitely important to have a team running the group. It gives you a bit of resilience. You can share the workload. And like you say, if numbers aren't your thing, you're going to find you're not enjoying that, and that can cause problems within the group. So it's great that people have stepped up to help you with that. So
and even when we switched to doing Zoom only meetings throughout the lockdown, I was running Zoom meetings once a week during lockdown to start with, because people were kind of needed a bit of extra support when things were all being shut down. But because I also have my own little part-time work venture, I was finding it difficult to do the Zoom meeting every week. So I asked the group if there was somebody else who was prepared to take on chairing the Zoom meeting each week. And one of the guys happily he's more technically minded than me, and he stepped forward happily to, I think he was quite pleased to have a job to do for the group, actually.
So you kept those, did you keep them going weekly then, the Zoom meetings during lockdown with members?
For quite a long time, yes, until we began to have like restrictions lifting slowly. And then gradually we began to have them less often. Yeah.
So you adapted.
Yeah, we adapted. Yeah.
So how do you then find new members? How do you publicize the group? And I think this is your area of expertise, really, isn't it?
Yes. So I've ended up really serving not only West Kent, I've ended up with a lot of Kent and also Sussex and bits of Surrey as well, because news has spread about the group. And so actually some people have been referred to the group again through their professionals, psychotherapists or OTs, who've, I think, are adept now at searching online, and then if they search, then they find me because I've published a certain amount of stuff online about myself and about the group. And so professionals can find me fairly easily and then refer their patients to the group. And secondly, I use newspaper coverage quite a lot. So early on, we had a meeting that was attended by our local MP, who's Greg Clark, who was a cabinet minister for a while. And he came to one of our meetings to talk to us about how stroke services were being reorganised across Kent. So he had a message to share with us. So he was really like a guest speaker. But on his visit, I made sure that we had photographers there and lots of photographs were taken, so that after the event, I was able to write a newspaper article that was submitted to the local papers, went into a few papers, and a few people across our area saw the articles in the paper and then saw the information about how to join, and then they contacted and joined. So definitely getting into the papers is a useful way. If you get in as an editorial article, so it doesn't cost any money, all of the ways that I promote the group are free, because that's what I specialize in, something I call thrifty marketing. So yeah.
I think that's answered, because we had a question come in before the webinar started about getting a positive message about stroke survivors out in the community. I think what you're talking about, Lisa, with getting into the papers, getting people to come and visit the group and raising the profile is a great way to do it. And as you say, free.
Yeah. I think I may have seen that question myself earlier, and my immediate answer to it was that everybody who attends the group is a good news story in themselves. I think everybody, all the attendees, everybody has a good news story to share. The very fact that you're still there and able to attend the group is a good news story, and you'll have a story that's linked to either your hospital experience or what you used to do and what you're going to do now, and what your support network has done to get you to where you are. There's always a story there, and it's going to be a positive story.
Definitely, and it's sharing that story, isn't it?
Yeah.
So do you
absolutely.
find over time that members come and go? Do some members come for a short amount of time and then maybe they get back to work and stop coming? Or have you had quite a consistent core group?
We've got a core group, which is really lovely. That's become really cemented, especially during lockdown when we were meeting on Zoom. There's a real core group of us now. And yes, one of my members did get a job. So although she's really committed to the group, but obviously when she was working, she couldn't join us as much. So I keep in touch with different people in different ways. So I've kept in touch regularly, doing a regular email newsletter for people who can't either give the time or physically get at that point to a meeting, because some people can't attend. If, like, one guy had a fall and broke his hip and he was in hospital for a while, so he wasn't able to come. But I want to keep in touch with everybody, whether they can join or not. So that's where I find the email newsletter is really handy.
And I see your email newsletter come out and you share with everyone what's been happening, what's coming up, and all these people you found and spoken to. And I guess for those that can't actually make the meeting, if they have gone back to work, they're still part of the group, aren't they?
Yes, yeah.
So you're going to be returning to face-to-face meetings. I think you've got a meeting coming up next week at a new venue. You've moved venue again.
It's October the 30th, and we've got a new venue it's actually a brand new venue. It's been built during the last year during the pandemic. It's a fantastic brand new building and a really convenient location for us. And it's been built with all adaptations in mind. It's completely sustainable with solar panels and everything, but it means it's also got a huge number of lifts and disabled toilets, all the things that attendees get concerned about. That's another thing I say, is that you have to learn what it is that your group is really concerned about. And my group is always really concerned to know about the access to the loos and obviously the accessibility, because like me, there's a couple of people that attend in wheelchairs. So having good access and good parking is a priority. So the new place I found has got great parking, lifts, toilets, and tea and coffee facilities. So I couldn't be happier.
It's ticked all the boxes for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really looking forward to going there on the 30th of October and actually seeing, because so far I visited the venue, just me with my carer, but not with other people. So it's going to be interesting when we actually all get into the room. I hope that the room's big enough. So
I hope they're all as excited as you about the new venue.
Yes, yeah, I think everybody is, yeah.
And it'd be nice to all get back together and be in a room together again, won't it?
Exactly.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone then who's thinking about starting a group in their local area? Do you encourage them to do that?
I would absolutely encourage anybody to do it, because I think most of all, it's such a fantastic way to give back after the experience that you've been through. It's about making the experience that you've been through into something positive. That's positive for other people. It's positive for you as well, because it really makes me feel like I'm helping people because of my lived experience. So I really think it's been great for me, and it's been helpful to the attendees, because I've had some really lovely feedback, and you know, I've had carers, wives and mothers who've been in tears on me because they're so relieved to find a group of people that understands their issues and so on. Yeah, I'd say that's another thing to bear in mind, that the group is for the patients, but as much as that, it's for their care support team, mothers, parents, carers, whoever they might be, who all really get a lot out of the group, because I share a lot of information. I have a directory of recommended services. So if you're looking to solve a particular issue, my directory will point you to a supplier, a recommended therapist or whatever that's in the local area, which everybody finds really useful.
Well, that's really helpful to have something to signpost people, because there must be lots of things that you all need to access, and it's finding those services.
Yeah.
And if one of you's using them, then chances are someone else will need to use them as well.
Exactly, yeah. It's even down to things like taxis that are happy to wait and have got, you know, like wheelchair taxis and all the kind of silly things like that, which are actually always harder to find than you'd expect at the moment when you need it.
Yeah. So I'm guessing then that how the group is now to how it was when you first started, it's evolved quite a bit with what you offer now and the information that you've pulled together for everybody.
Yes,
is that
yes.
how you saw it moving?
Yeah, no, it has evolved. So I just have to make sure that I don't get overly ambitious with it, because that's the thing with me, is that I kind of might want to over deliver. So it's going to be really nice when we meet face to face on the 30th, that I can just ask the guys then, what is it that you really value from this, and what would you like me to focus my energy on?
And are you going to stick with meetings being monthly?
Yeah, monthly, definitely.
Yeah, that works for your team there, doesn't it?
And one thing that I know lots of people would like, but which I don't like, because I'm a dictatorship, I'm a benign dictatorship when it comes to the group, is people often say they'd like it if they knew that the meeting was every third Tuesday of the month or something like that. And that really doesn't work for me. I've never been prepared to be pinned down to a regular day. But so from when we restart in October, I'm going to introduce it as it's going to be a rotating day. So it's going to be every month, but each month it'll be a different day of the week that it's held. So that way, somebody's always happy, because there's one thing that is impossible to find, is when you get a group of people together, it's impossible to find one day that's good for everybody. So and then every time you settle on one particular day and you decide to go for it, the people that can't make it will feel let down that they've missed out. So I've decided to rotate the day of the week so that every month somewhere in the year it'll suit everybody. So
they'll keep them all on their toes, working out what day each month we're going to be meeting then.
I'll send out lots of reminders.
No, you're right, it's difficult to find the right day to suit everybody, isn't it?
I find it really useful to the backup communication that we have for our group is a WhatsApp group, which is really good, because that's a really good way of keeping in touch with people fairly immediately. So I'd really recommend, if people are happy to share their phone details and have WhatsApp, there's some kind of an instant messaging platform is really useful. Because then
it's great to share reminders, isn't it? Don't forget we're meeting.
Reminders, and when people are running late and they can't find it and all that sort of thing. It's a really good way of just keeping up to date.
And I think in the age we're at the moment with COVID, it's quite handy that should something happen and the group can't meet for a particular reason, you can quickly get hold of everyone and say, sorry, it can't happen this week.
And we use it throughout the week for sharing photos and updates. So today there's been lots of swap news about booster jabs and flu jabs going on in our group, because I've been reminding them all to get their flu jabs. So everybody's now letting me know about their jab status for COVID and for the flu jab. So,
got everyone covered for the winter.
yeah, trying to keep everybody safe and healthy.
Yeah. So now you've set up and run a group and it's been going for a few years. Is there anything that you know now that you wished you knew when you first started running the group?
Yeah, probably the one thing I would say is it's really worth whoever sets their group up considering what they want to apply in terms of the age range. So I've always stuck kind of very tightly to the different strokes 15 to 65 age bracket. But in my travels, I've found all sorts of, in all my publicity, I get approached by all sorts of stroke survivors who are older than 65. And I don't want to turn them away and not share all the information I've got with them. So at one stage I had a completely separate splinter group, which of my older group. Obviously, I redirect them all towards the Stroke Association, which is where they ought to be. So, but I end up looking after them too. So I think
if people want to be active and if they want to get involved, then they're welcome to come along, aren't they?
Yeah.
So what would be your top tip then for someone who's thinking about starting a group?
I think my top tip would be plan it in your own mind first and know what it is that you're aiming for. If you're the one that's going to be giving all the time and effort into getting this going, kind of think it through in advance and know what you're aiming for.
Definitely. And I think I'd say don't rush it because it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while to get everything up and running, find people and get prepared. And so
make sure that you do it in a way that you're going to enjoy it, because the whole point of it really is that it should end up being, it shouldn't be an energy drain for you. It should be something that gives you energy and makes you feel better as part of your own rehabilitation.
Yeah, definitely. So how has it made you feel then running a group, Lisa?
Oh, it's made me feel really good, really kind of, it's been very heartwarming.
And have your family been really supportive of that? Have they seen a difference in you since you started the group?
Yes, they probably have seen a difference in me, yes.
So can I ask the last question for you then? Are you glad that you did it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so glad I did it, which is why I would really recommend anybody if somebody's in an area and you don't have a local group and you would really like to see people in real life, I think you have to be a fairly sociable person who enjoys going out and meeting new people. But I would really recommend it to anybody to do it.
Definitely. And if people do want to get involved and do it, please get in touch with myself, or if you want to speak to Lisa about the group in West Kent, towards the end I will put up our email addresses so you'll be able to get in touch with us. Now I've had a quick look through the chat box. I don't think we've got any questions. I think we've covered everything that was in there. I'll just scroll through it again. I can see Greg's put into the chat how to contact us at Different Strokes, so that's really great. No questions. So I think hopefully we've answered everything people should need to know.
I think I should just say that I should just give a shout out for that there's a group in East Kent as well. So there is an East Kent Different Strokes local support group that's run by a lady called Carly, who I chatted to a little bit as she was setting it up. So
yeah. Yeah, there is the group up there. They haven't reopened yet. Some of our groups are still in the process of reopening following COVID.
Yeah.
So I would say at the moment we've got 36 groups. And
wow.
Just over 15 are up and running with everything in place now, which is great. There are a few where their venues have turned into vaccination centres. So they're not sure when they will come back. And some are sort of gradually getting into the swing of getting things back again. Because requirements have changed at venues, which has made things a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
So Carly's not up and running yet, but I'm hoping she will be towards the end of the year. But you can find out where all our groups are on our website. So it's quite easy for people to find. So thank you, Lisa. It's been really great talking to you and hearing about the path that you've followed.
Well, thank you very
and
much for
some lovely
inviting me.
comments about you, Lisa. You're a star and you're an inspiration.
Oh, good. That's nice to hear.
It's good. It's nice to get positive feedback and know that you're making a difference
yes.
to people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a message from Jack. Thank you. That's really helped. Function levels raised.
Mm-hmm.
That's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's going to bring us to the close of today's session. And I hope that everyone who's been listening has found it really helpful. As I said, if you want to contact myself or Lisa, I will pop up our email addresses at the end of the session, and I'll leave it there before the session is closed. So it'll give you a few minutes to jot them down if you want to get in touch. Tomorrow will be the last day of our virtual conference. And we've got 2 more sessions left to come. At 10 o'clock tomorrow, there's Laura Barlow from Bold, Burton, Kemp Solicitors, who'll be talking about reclaiming your rights after stroke. And then at 2 o'clock, we have our moving forward session, which is a Q&A with a panel of stroke experts. Today's session has been recorded and it's going to be available in a couple of weeks on YouTube. And I know that's something, Lisa, you asked about because you want to share that with a few people once it's on the YouTube channel. Thanks again to our sponsors, Bolt, Bird and Kemp, who have made our virtual conference possible this week. And thank you everyone for joining in this afternoon. I hope you found it hopeful. And do get in touch if you want to talk to me about setting up a Different Strokes group. And lastly, thank you, Lisa, for joining me and sharing your experience of starting a group. And if anyone in the West Kent area wants to get in touch with Lisa, please do. And if you want to go along to her group, they're starting, is it next Saturday?
Yeah, Saturday, 30th of October in the new Civic Centre in Southborough.
So anyone in the area would like to go along, feel free to go along. Just let Lisa know you're going to be going. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a good afternoon. I shall share the details now of our email addresses.